So first of all, we're very pleased that the TRAI has given very clear recommendations with regard to spectrum, especially for the upcoming auction. They've talked about including all of the 2100, they've talked about including excess spectrum from BSNL, they've talked about the EGSM for 800. So all of the additional spectrum that needs to come online has been mentioned. They're all feasible, they're all appropriate, and so we believe that in the next auction, the government should put all of it up so that there's no artificial scarcity that is going to be there in the auction. The second point that was also raised by TRAI is to give us a clear roadmap with regard to upcoming bands of spectrum. So 700 megahertz spectrum is available. You know, there is sub 700, there is spectrum that's available in the 400, 500. So people have been talking about white space. We think that the Supreme Court has made it very clear that all spectrum that is to be used for commercial purposes needs to be auctioned. So we believe that it should go through the auction process, and whoever wants to pay the appropriate amount for it to roll out these services will do it. And so that is something that we will want to work with the government. So that's our point on spectrum. With regard to the broadband issue, spectrum is a critical part of broadband. We believe that NOFAN, which is now under scrutiny, needs to be privatized in terms of its process going forward. We are working with NOFAN as a private participant in there, and to be able to get the right of way. Right of way has become a critical component for us, because in terms of getting fiber laid, in terms of the new towers, we are facing lots of difficulties in the regional areas and the states. They all are adopting various guidelines. They're not aligning, except in one or two instances, with the DOT central government guidelines, and so we are facing difficulty in rolling out our broadband applications on our network, so that the network itself, like our towers and our fiber, is not getting in place. So that is going to become a critical challenge for us on the broadband side.
The government will have first full budget next year, the February. What are your expectations from the budget?
So our principal budget requirements is to reduce the overall levies on the industry. Today, there's about 30% of levies, if you look at all of the levies on the industry. So we are identifying certain levies that are coming on the industry to reduce that in the budget. But the principal issue that we are grappling with is the GST, the goods and service tax, and we're very pleased that the government is going to put that up. One of the areas of concern is the exclusion of the petrochemicals products from the GST. States seem to have a problem with this. Now, as you know, we use a lot of petrochemical products for purposes of providing our service. So excluding that, continues to leave a burden on the industry. So we believe that the government should, as soon as possible, include the spectrum or include the charges that we pay for the use of petroleum products as an offset in the GST calculations.
Towards the Make India program, are the Indian operators or are the Indian telecom industry ready?
So when you look at the Make in India program, we are all for it. We support the Make in India program. Make in India includes software, not just the hardware, so both are there. So we support the applications development. One of the critical things that we have pointed out is that when you look at telecom and IT products, 80 to 85% of the value of a product is in the software. It's not in the hardware. So even if you have a Make in India and it is only on the hardware side, you will not get the big bang for the buck in terms of the number of employees. As everybody knows, IT and telecom manufacturing does not yield a whole lot of jobs, but it is in the value of the services and in the software that is attached to the product. That's where our focus is going to have to be in terms of Make in India.
So last question on the the tower deployment part. Have you convinced the government on the radiation, and there is a relationship between the tower deployment and the radiation? What is the status now?
So it's really not us having to convince the government. The government has done its own study and it's done its own background checks, and it has decided what the safety norms are. So it's not the industry telling the government, it's the government telling the industry. And what the industry does is really compliance. So we are really working on the compliance end, and from the time that the new rules and regulations have come into play, all of our towers have been in compliance with it. Now what has happened For example, in the Gujarat High Court case, the Gujarat High Court has said that it is safe. The Kerala High Court has said it is safe. Even in the Rajasthan situation, the court has held it is safe except in certain areas. And of course, that's being appealed to the Supreme Court. Most recently, the government itself, the Honorable Minister for Telecom and IT, has publicly stated in Parliament that the safety norms adopted by the government in India are completely safe for everybody. It's low enough to cover pregnant women, children, babies, people in the hospital, the whole gamut. And so therefore, our point is that going forward that the government needs to be involved in international organizations like WHO, which are continuously studying and evaluating this. And if there is a need to change or modify those, we are happy to do so. It's the government, though, that sets the safety standards. It's us that follow, implement, and the DoT that makes sure that we are in compliance.
So last question, how do you rate the Telecom Ministry out of 10 this time? You know, the Telecom Ministry, not Telecom Minister, Telecom Ministry, out of 10. They spent 6 months.
So I would say that the Telecom Ministry, which is really the DoT, out of a 10, we would give them like a 5 or 6. The principal problem is getting decisions made in a timely manner and have that come back to us. That is one critical area. The second critical area is that except in certain areas where we have had good support, in all of the other major areas, we don't seem to have an involvement of the industry. The industry is not called in beforehand to provide its input. It's usually after the fact and we're told. So I think there needs to be a more inclusive, deliberative process. Again, please don't misunderstand, there are pockets. We've worked very well with Mrs. Theotia. We've worked very well, Mr. Sirohi. We've worked very well with some other folks in the DoT who have been very helpful for the industry. But as a general rule, we would like to have that be more of the pattern that we see from DoT as that being the exception.